Hello, Arizona. Welcome to the Lawgitimate podcast. We are your hosts, Mike and Rochelle Poulton with PN Law, and we are here today to discuss legal tips for real estate investing. First of all, we're both attorneys, but we're not your attorneys yet. If you contact us at www.PNLaw.pro or give us a call at 602-427-5613, you can consult with us about whatever legal questions you have. You can retain us. You can pay us money to be your lawyers. We'll be glad to help you out with that. But today, we're just here to give you some general tips on legal issues in real estate investing. Rochelle, what do we have to cover?
So today we're going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to talk about what you should do to best protect yourself when investing in real estate. So these are just common things that we see that we hope that everybody does because it avoids having to hire us when things go wrong.
But you should hire us in the first place to make sure things go right. That might be tip number one. If you're going to get into real estate investment, it pays to have a relationship with an attorney. It's not going to be super expensive to do that, but you should consult with someone and you should have them help you set things up. Unless you're a very experienced business owner who's quite comfortable with business organizations, formation, equity arrangements, all of these sorts of things. Perhaps you have a business degree, perhaps you've worked in corporate management and you're quite comfortable with it. That's great. Handle it yourself. Otherwise, if you're new to it, you probably ought to have professional advice. That's why business people work with professionals like lawyers and CPAs and people like that, great insurance brokers. You've got that network of professionals who help give them the advice, help teach them how to do it properly, and protect them. That's what those relationships are for.
So tip number one is if you're buying a investment property, form an LLC.
Yes.
It is a business. Congratulations, you're a business owner.
In Arizona, it's quite easy to form LLCs. You can do it yourself. You can also pay an attorney to do it. Either way, you want to have an LLC for a whole bunch of different reasons. LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. It is a company. In other words, it's a legal entity. It's a legal person by itself that has limited liability for its owners. In other words, it provides isolation of liability between the things the business does versus the things the owners themselves do. There are all kinds of asterisks and caveats to that limitation of liability. There are tons of ways that you can end up being personally liable anyways for stuff that your business does. However, if you do not have an LLC or another type of business entity, then you are definitely liable for everything your business does. So the only way you've got any hope of protecting yourself for liability from your business activities is by forming an entity like an LLC or a corporation. Corporations are more complicated. There's rarely a need for it. LLCs are far more preferable and flexible in most circumstances for these types of activities.
And if you're going into real estate investing with multiple people, especially family, you definitely need an LLC.
Yeah. If you've got more than one person owning it, it really doesn't make any sense to do it without having an LLC or a corporation involved.
A joint venture, still form an LLC.
Yeah. Joint ventures. Well, we're not going to get into that. But bottom line is a joint venture in a pure legal sense is a bad idea these days. That's what LLCs are for now. This isn't the 1980s. So next, get a bookkeeper. Get a commercial insurance broker. Commercial meaning someone who does business insurance. This is probably not going to be the same insurance broker who has been doing your auto and home policies if you're not already a business person. You want someone who does insurance for businesses.
And there are plenty of them. We've had plenty of them on the show.
Yep.
They're fantastic.
Absolutely.
Like you really want to make sure that when you're protecting your real estate investment, that it's a lot different than being in a primary residence. Like your homeowner's insurance policy isn't going to function the same way. You need, especially if you're doing if it's vacant for 6 months while you're renovating it, or it's a rental property and you have tenants, there's different types of insurance coverage that you need. And it's important to have a good agent that can help you navigate that and also communicate that to the state.
And as a landlord running a business that owns and operates rental properties, you need to have general liability insurance. This is not something that you're going to be familiar with really unless you are already an insurance nerd or you're a business owner. But the idea is this: as a general homeowner, someone who just has a house and lives in it, you probably have a homeowner's insurance policy. And part of that policy is insurance that covers the value of your house if it burns down or gets smashed by a tree. That's great. But the other half of that policy is liability insurance for you. If somebody trips and falls on your property and breaks their leg, your homeowner's insurance liability coverage will help cover that. If you do something which injures someone, depending on the circumstances, either your homeowner's policy or your vehicle insurance policy's liability coverage is likely to cover whatever it is that you did that caused someone else to get injured. None of that will help you in a business activity. If something happens involving you and one of your rental properties that hurts someone, maybe you did a repair yourself and the repair injured someone. Maybe you were working on a property and someone got injured. Maybe you were driving to a property in somebody else's car and injured them. Whatever. Lots of things that could happen. And someone gets hurt and they sue over it. You need coverage for that type of injury, and your homeowner's or auto policy is not likely to cover it under those circumstances. So that's why you need to talk to a business insurance broker to make sure that you have general liability coverage that applies to your business activities as a landlord.
It's also a good idea to get an umbrella policy. Just ask them about it. We're not going to go into it.
Yep.
So, there's also this big debate on if you have multiple properties, should you get multiple LLCs to cover each one of them? And the, only answer we can give you is,
maybe.
It depends.
Yeah. If you've got commercial properties, yes, commercial properties are worth doing in what are called single property entities. You form an LLC just for each individual property. Generally, you're going to have those LLCs be owned by an umbrella company that holds all of those. So you get this pyramid structure going on with several LLCs. That's worth doing for commercial. It can be worth doing for residential under some circumstances, but sometimes it's just not worth the complexity. These are things to talk over with an attorney. A lot of it depends on where you're planning to go with this operation. If you're going to be expanding it dramatically, if you're soliciting outside investment, if you're using other people's money, things like that. Lot to think about there, but in general, one LLC is probably going to be good enough for a few rental properties if they're just houses.
Yeah. And the benefit of having a bookkeeper who's helping you with the LLC is so that at the end of the year, your books are done.
Yep.
Like doing your books yourself, tracking all those expenses, where your rental income is going, how it gets deposited, make sure you have a business bank account. You really need to do the things to manage your investment properties like a business, and having a bookkeeper is just one easy thing. Now you may have a cash flow issue where it's like, well, I can't really afford to get a bookkeeper. Well, can you afford to deal with the tax implications later because you didn't have good books?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of the analysis.
So another point, and this is a little bit of a non sequitur, but I think it's worth mentioning, is this. Arizona is one of the states which uses title insurance policies as evidence of clear title or good title to marketable title to convey a property. What does this mean? Well, in some states, you can buy and sell properties simply by conveying a deed for that property. And the fact that a deed has been conveyed generally indicates that there was marketable title, or perhaps more clearly, the fact that someone holds a deed to the property is evidence that that person has marketable title. In other words, that they have the ownership interest that can be sold. Arizona instead says that having the deed isn't really evidence of marketable title. Instead, it's not enough. Instead, issuing a title insurance policy or possessing a title insurance policy which ensures your ownership interest, that is the evidence of marketable title. So in other words, showing up and saying, hey, I've got the deed to this property, that's only sort of evidence that you own it. It isn't really evidence that you're good to go selling it. Instead, you've got to go get a title insurance policy that says, see, this title insurance company says that I have marketable title to the property. And that is what gives you a solid legal position to sell the property. Now, this sounds really esoteric, and it is kind of esoteric. And the upshot of this is that in many states, you can, as a property investor, as someone who's wheeling and dealing in real estate, you can draft your own deeds. You can record your own deeds. You can just go selling properties and buying properties without involving escrow, without involving title companies. In Arizona, you can do that, but you're taking a huge risk by doing it, because if you purchase a property without getting a title insurance policy, you are taking a big risk that you don't actually own it. You could obtain a deed and end up not actually having an ownership interest in that property. This means that unless you are a very sophisticated real estate investor, perhaps even an attorney yourself, perhaps a title insurance agent yourself, you should never take this risk in Arizona. Every property transaction needs to go through a title insurance company. You need to have a title insurance policy issued for every conveyance of real estate. You should not just go drafting deeds and recording them yourself in this state. You can do it elsewhere. You can't do it here without taking really big risks that your chain of title will be interrupted and that you will then be unable to prove your ownership of that property or sell it later.
So that's why we're saying just don't risk it?
Yes, don't risk it unless you are 100% certain that you know what you're doing. And what that really means is you need to do your own title search going back very far.
And know how to do that.
Know how to do that. Construct the entire chain of title and make sure that you're very comfortable that you've captured everything. I've done that. I have taken a couple properties without title insurance in Arizona, but I was nervous about it and I was very thorough and I'm comfortable with the result. Would I do it again? Probably not. I think at this point, I've decided that just paying for the title insurance policy and waiting the extra several weeks that it takes to get one is worth it in every instance, even though I do trust my ability to reconstruct a chain of title. So take
just pay someone to do it.
Take that as you may. Yeah.
That's what you pay insurance for.
Exactly.
Right.
Written contracts. So in a lot of areas of business people tend to get pretty comfortable with handshake deals and verbal arrangements. And as attorneys, we see this all the time. People call us because things have gone wrong and it turns out there was nothing in writing or there was never really a clear agreement in the first place on what was supposed to happen. Well, real estate is the land of signed written agreements, period.
You must have one.
Must. What we mean by that is not simply that it's good practice, but that it is literally impossible to convey an interest in real estate without a signed writing. Why is that, Rochelle?
The Statute of Frauds.
The Statute of Frauds. The Statute of Frauds is a statute which exists almost everywhere, and it certainly does in Arizona, and says that certain types of deals have to be proven by signed written contracts. And we're just simply not even going to consider the possibility that a deal exists unless there is a signed written contract. And we limit the types of deals that are subject to this to ones that are real big, basically. And real estate deals are real big. Real estate is a big deal. Selling real estate's a big deal. So big deals have to be evidenced by signed written contracts. You cannot sell a property without a signed written contract, period. It's literally not possible to do it.
That's why there are purchase agreements.
That's why there are purchase agreements. So if you think you've got a deal with somebody to buy or sell a property and you did it verbally on a handshake, you literally do not have an enforceable agreement, period. You can't go to court and say he said he would buy it. You can't go to court and say he said he would sell it.
Even if you gave them money.
Even if you gave them money, you'll probably get your money back, but you're not going to be able to force the deal. That's just how it goes because selling real estate's a big deal. Now, this also applies to contracts which, by their terms, cannot be performed within a period of 1 year. What does that mean? Well, it means that a lease for more than a year has to be evidenced by a signed writing. And in reality, a lease for any period of time really needs to be evidenced by a signed writing because leases have all kinds of terms involved. Leases are not simple. No lease is simple.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Bottom line is that any lease deal you're going to do on either end of the transaction involves all kinds of provisions and catches and, well, but I said no dogs. Well, I said he couldn't park out on the street in front of the place. Well, okay, fine. You got all these terms, all kinds of terms. Well, he was supposed to mow the grass. Whatever.
It's got to be in the lease agreement.
Put it in writing and sign the thing. There's just no excuse for not doing that. This is a business. Treat it like a business. Write it all down. Make sure everybody signs it. Real estate is the land of written contracts.
No handshakes, please.
Yeah.
We can't help you. We can't help you
No.
if you didn't have an agreement.
Just ain't happening. These are very frustrating consultations at our office.
Yes. So these are just legal tips. This is not legal advice. These are legal tips. Get it in writing. Form an LLC. Have a bookkeeper. Get the stupid title insurance. Just pay the extra money. Get a good insurance agent. These are things that will make your real estate investing experience a much more seamless, far less stressful process, and reduces the need to deal with disputes later.
Yep.
That's where real estate investing gets expensive, is when you're paying attorneys to unwind a very complicated transaction.
Yes. Or paying us to tell you that you're SOL.
Yeah.
Not going to be able to do anything about it. Nope.
Yeah.
Oh, when you're buying or selling a property, you don't have to use a realtor necessarily. You don't have to go through a realtor to buy or sell a property.
But it's recommended.
Well, it's recommended, but if you're selling your property to your neighbor or something like that, you can contact a title company directly and have them handle it. They'll set up escrow. You end up not paying the commission, but they will do the deeds. They will handle the title insurance policy, etc., and do the closing, the so-called closing of that transaction for you. And that is, in Arizona, highly recommended. Highly recommended, because otherwise you really are just flying by the seat of your pants. And trust me, unless you're a real estate attorney or a title agent yourself, trying to evaluate the chain of title for a property and figure out whether the seller really owns it can be quite tough, and you're just not going to get a solid answer. And you may think that that's an uncommon thing to come up. It is not.
No.
Not at all. It's very, very frequent that people who think they own a property do not actually own it free and clear. Routine. So,
yeah, we don't like messing with title issues, but they do happen. So if you've got real estate questions or real estate investing questions, we are happy to answer them. You can find us online at PNLaw.pro, or you can give us a call at 602-427-5613. And this has been the Lawgitimate Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.